Started to see now, especially over the last 9 months, is that people have now become dependent on our service to pay for, food. And I'll give you a quick example. We even had one person during COVID who was trapped overseas. His wife was in the hospital delivering their baby, and he used our service with Bitcoin to convert to a gift card, an Amazon gift card, so that she could get the supplies that she needed delivered to the hospital, because she didn't have anybody, including her husband, to be able to help her out. And I think those are it blew us away, because those are the things that you realize can be achieved by now having a more open, more efficient, accessible system and giving people
I totally
choice.
agree. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic real world story.
What is going on, everybody? Hope all is going well. This is Sam Connor, and I'm just really happy that you guys have joined us today. I've got Eric with Bidali, co-founder, CEO, in the building with us. And my goodness, it is just going to be one of those days on this meme token day. We're going to talk about some real world use case. Bidali is really an incredible app, and it is live. I absolutely think that you guys should check this thing out. It's available on the App Store, and man, Amazon, Banana Republic, PlayStation brands, everybody's using this. And as you can see in the clip that we started off with, he's really bringing a unique way of leveraging this technology to bring some real world use case. And with that, I happily bring to the show Eric. Eric, man, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining the show.
I'm good, Sam. Thanks for having me, dude. This is great. I was enjoying the intro music, man. Vibing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well, man. I hope everybody listening around the globe, enjoys the fun that I like to have to kick things off. Shout out to everybody. What I love is, we got people from all over the globe watching. Thank you, Brian, for checking in. Eric, let's start off and please share a little bit of history about your background with the audience.
Sure. Yeah. So based up in Canada, kind of got my background's in computer science, kind of been in the startup ecosystem for a while. I was contributing to open source kind of pre-GitHub days, so I'm kind of dating myself a little bit. but trying to keep baby face together. See, kids are aging me. But yeah, I mean, got into the space, I would say really back maybe a bit more seriously in 2015, definitely more seriously in 2017. And we started Bidali in 2018, kind of early 2018. But we, I had been doing my computer science degree, heard about the Bitcoin white paper, thought it was interesting, didn't really take it too seriously, because my classic reaction was, who's going to use these Bitcoins, right? Like, cool computer science concept, but who's going to use these Bitcoins? And then fast forward a couple of years, heard about, the famous pizza purchase. I was like, oh, okay, somebody actually bought something for real with this. This is interesting. And then fast forward, what really got me was in 2015, so myself and a couple of my other co-founders, we built a fairly popular web development framework, open source, Node.js, JavaScript based, called Feathers.js. And it's used by about 25,000 devs around the world, at startups to Fortune 100s. And we're doing consulting and looking to hire people. And obviously people familiar with the tech. And so we found great people all over the world: Nigeria, Venezuela, Argentina, Iran, Ukraine, like literally everywhere. And we wanted to hire these people, obviously, but we had problems paying them. In a lot of those countries, it's not easy to pay them. And this was kind of around the same time that I really, heard a bit more about what was happening on the Silk Road, the amount of transaction volume in Bitcoin, and that, inherently it was going, wow, this fulfilled its prophecy. You've got people that don't trust each other, buying and selling, in this case, mainly narcotics, but like buying and selling drugs online. So they're selling physical things all over the world. These people inherently don't trust each other, right? And this is being used as a payment method. I'm like, this has fulfilled its prophecy of digital internet money. Like it fulfilled the white paper's proof. And I went, I think we've seen through technology adoption, it always happens typically by criminals or fringe area first, nerds. And I can kind of say that because I would consider myself one. And then you go through an adoption curve, an adoption cycle, right? Where you start to hit, mainstream and then laggards on the tail end. And, I think we're still very early in that cycle. We're probably heading more towards the mainstream portion of the bell curve. But at that time in 2015, it was still super early. And if you look at things like cell phones and the internet and email, all that stuff was adopted by people operating on the fringe or gray area first, and then reaching more mainstream adoption as it kind of got proven out. And that's the way I see things in technology in general, but digital currency or cryptocurrency in particular. And so that, we went down that rabbit hole, learning a bit more. We tried to pay people in Bitcoin, had a bunch of challenges there around, at that time it was relatively cheap still to transact. So that wasn't really the issue, but it was more around the volatility and lack of the ability to actually spend on, once somebody received the Bitcoin on their side, their first question was like, okay, well, how do I pay for food and gas and, groceries and medicine and all that sort of stuff. And so, fast forward a couple of years, we kind of abandoned that idea. We said, okay, we found a couple of different ways to try and pay people. Some people we just couldn't pay through keeping in contact with people in Venezuela and other places. We got familiar with, we got exposed to the challenges that people have in those countries in terms of lack of trust in government or institutions, lack of US dollar liquidity that prevents them from doing business, lack of capital access, or even just banking as a whole. So they can't, really, I think all over the world right now, we have a lot of have countries, and I'm fortunate to have been born in one, be very lucky that way, in Canada, where we've got, relatively stable banking, good trust in government overall, I've never been exposed to those problems, never went through inflation or hyperinflation. And then you have a bunch of other countries where that's not the case, right? where people don't have the ability to access this stuff. And, I think that's wrong. I think it's digital banking now should be a fundamental human right, because without it, you can't do anything on the global scale, and you certainly can't compete. So that's where we're coming from, is that, really trying to push real world adoption, knowing that the speculative use cases are really important to creating a vibrant ecosystem that enables the liquidity, that enables this technology to flourish and to grow and be experimented with. But ultimately, our focus is to try and, as cliche as it sounds, to democratize financial access and truly enable anybody to build and control their own wealth. Because I think the one thing that we've recognized over the years is that blockchain networks are really good at efficient value transfer and, reducing costs associated with that. What we're seeing is this internet of value emerging, and where this really has the potential, particularly in countries where they don't have this trust or don't have this financial access or infrastructure, is not only can it open up your ability to access financial services, but you can now leapfrog going from your local economy to a global one. And you now have the option to choose how much you want to trust another counterparty. Like, do you want to be fully self-custodial? Do you want to put your trust fully in somebody else? Do you want to sit somewhere in the middle? We have the ability to now do that. Whereas in our existing, digital financial infrastructure, even in Canada, we don't have that choice. Like, if for some reason a bank goes under, or, a bank cuts you off, it's really hard. You can't operate in today's world.
Right. So you were originally starting to pay, you mentioned you were trying to pay your employees, and the issues that you had with doing so through Bitcoin, right? So at what point was Stellar brought to your attention? How did you discover Stellar?
I think I found it in 2015, 2016. Like, I was a recipient of one of the first airdrops, actually, way back.
Wait. So the airdrop actually worked. It brought you to
Stellar. Yeah. I would
cool.
say that was more out of curiosity. And I held it for a while because you couldn't really do anything with it at the time, actually, other than kind of send it to each other for fun. So, I think basically in 2015, once I just, kind of had this light bulb moment or aha moment where this peer-to-peer digital cash is real. It's going to happen. Bitcoin may or may not be the solution. I think at the time, and I still kind of believe this, that Bitcoin, I come from oil and gas country. So, like, to me, the parallel between commodity like oil and Bitcoin and mining and Ethereum was very strong. And so I always kind of looked at Bitcoin as a kind of a bearer asset, or something similar to gold or oil in that respect. And so, even just the mechanics, like, if you understand, if this gets network adoption, you're going to end up paying a lot in fees, like how much, it's easy to say this in hindsight now too, because we've seen it happen. But my perspective was that this technology, one, we need to solve the problems around where you can actually spend it and pay for real goods and services, especially in a cost-effective way. Like, that's the important piece, is like, you've been able to spend Bitcoin for forever, right? But because it's been treated as a speculative asset, there's only a small percentage of people that really want to do it. And then the second piece, I think, is it's just not cost effective unless you're dealing with large, especially with the network fees now, but it's not that cost effective if you're wanting to buy a cup of coffee, or, pay a small bill, like pay for your regular day-to-day payments. And so we thought, there are three problems with the space, or with the ability to pay for goods and services using this. You need to have the ability to pay or spend at places you care about in a cost-effective way. The user experience needs to be easy, so people shouldn't have to worry about losing their funds if they lose their private keys and like all these different things. Even down to like setting the fee price to make sure the transaction gets confirmed in time, like all that sort of stuff should just be kind of taken care of in a smart way. And then the volatility, I think, was a big one. We did a bunch of research too in emerging markets, and in this case in Venezuela and Argentina, where they're going through hyperinflation. And we were asking people, why do you hold cryptocurrency? If not, why? What are you looking for? And the major reasons were volatility. A lot of these people are looking for stability, not extreme volatility. And then the other thing is some of these people don't even have the extra money to be able to move their wealth into crypto, right? Like a lot of people are living around the world are living, what we call hand to mouth, right? So you earn and you spend the amount that you earn in a given day, or maybe every 2 days, right? So you're not building up savings. And part of the reason you're not building up savings is you're not earning enough income because you're localized to your own market. So you don't have global access. You can't outsource your skills. And the other part is because of the cost of doing financial transactions in a lot of these countries is really hard, right? It's expensive.
And I mean, it's such a great point that you bring up, Eric. Is so often when I hear Bitcoin, and being discussed, it's always talked about how developing countries, rely on it and how they need it. And they make it seem, you hear about these missions in parts of Africa as well, where, they're really touting and pushing Bitcoin. But as you mentioned, where they're trying to go, people are, those fees and the difficulties of going in and out and actually using it is extremely high. So, great point that you're making. Great point that you're making.
And they are getting adoption. I mean, it's not to say that it's not happening, because it is.
Right.
But we look at is these are early adopters, right? What is going to bring in the mainstream of this curve, right? And the mainstream is solving for those three problems. So bring it back to, how we discovered Stellar and where that kind of fits into the vision and what we're working on. I think we saw pretty early what was happening with Ethereum and stable coins, and that concept of stable coins. And so I said, oh man, this could solve that problem around volatility. Because for better or worse, most people around the world still want the greenback. They want the US dollar, right? Because it has this, it's the global reserve currency, but it has this perceived stability, especially when you compare it to the Venezuelan bolívares or, the Argentine peso or Nigerian naira. This is where the majority of commerce is still kind of happening, where people covet the US dollars. So our thinking was that, okay, if you can have US dollars on faster, low cost payment rails that are secure and now enable you to have the option to custody your own funds or leave it with somebody else and reduce fees, like all of these things kind of coming together. If you can actually pay for real goods and services with that technology, this now becomes a viable monetary medium for a lot of people around the world. And it can have a huge impact because now they go from having no banking or localized banking to now anybody with a smartphone can have a multi-currency offshore bank account, essentially, which has been reserved for the ultra wealthy, right? Like it's hard for me to get one as a Canadian citizen to get an offshore bank account, right? Like you need to have a certain amount of net worth and like all these sorts of things, right? And now anybody with a internet connected device can do this, which is crazy. I don't think people recognize how big a shift this is going to be in terms of lifting people out of poverty, and global access and efficiency and so on. And we're still at the early stages of that. I mean, there's a lot of things that still need to happen. Even when we've talked with governments in Africa, for example, like Niger, I'll give an example. I was speaking with one of the ministers there last year, and the challenge that they have is like, first they need to lay the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there are basic needs that kind of need to be met: food, water, internet, like some of these public services.
I mean,
and
wait,
then you can start
isn't
to
that
do that.
crazy though that we're at that point now where you just said food, water, internet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but you're
It's a necessity.
absolutely right. Once again, it's a necessity. It's a necessity. When talking about the currencies, Bidali, when you go to the app, it shows gift cards. So explain why gift cards. And I showed a clip.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw the clip where at Meridian 2019. This is actually what got me attracted to Bidali was that panel. And for everyone listening, you can go to I want to say it's meridian.stellar.org. You can catch all of the all of the videos from Meridian. But this one really struck me because you talk about a gentleman trying to get money to his pregnant wife, and anybody. I got 2 kids, so the pregnancy is a crazy, hectic, stressful time, and on top of that, you're trying to get money to your wife who's in labor, and there's no time to go to Western Union. There's no time to go all these places. How do you get money? And he logged on to your platform and did it. And so, I'm a believer of why you use gift cards, but if you can explain to the audience the gift card route that you guys took.
Yeah, sure. So, bringing it back to the problem to be solved around, how do people pay for goods and services? So back in 2018, 2017, and before, there are people who've made attempts at, payment processing and things like that. But the problem is that, usually these are accepted at small mom and pop shops, or, you could only really buy swag like hats, t-shirts, or really high-end items that are typically OTC and broker deals, like a yacht, a car, a house, an island maybe. So I think, we really looked at it and said, okay, well, for the majority of people, neither of these options are really what they're looking for. If you need to pay for real goods and services like food, medicine, groceries, peer-to-peer payments already solves kind of the rent scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have something like Cash App or Venmo, you can Cash App somebody. We don't have something like that in Canada, so it's a little bit of a trying to serve our own need. It'd be nice to have a Venmo-esque in Canada and elsewhere. US is pretty fortunate in that way, but I think we also looked at, what are the other things that people need to pay for? It's food, gas, clothing, medicine, like all of that stuff. And I think that was the thing that sorry, just one sec. I want to make sure this camera doesn't die on me. That was the thing that we looked at in terms of how do we actually support that method for people to buy goods and services at normal places. And we certainly, as a startup, couldn't go to Amazon and be like, hey, Amazon, will you use our platform to accept Bitcoin? They'd be like, no, go away. Right? So we initially thought about doing a drop shipping store, actually, but then we were like, we got to curate product and all this stuff. And we actually thought that gift cards was probably the next best thing. We happened to know somebody in the space, and then kind of continued from there. And so it just kind of snowballed. I think now we're at over 3,000 brands across 150 countries. It started off with just US only, Canada only. And we kind of expanded out from there. We learned a lot about the space, learned about some of the challenges with fraud and money laundering there, and how blockchain and cryptocurrency could actually solve a bunch of those problems. People can now buy mobile airtime in a bunch of countries as well, and working on bill payments and other solutions. I mean, really, we're just trying to cover where people can pay for their goods and services as efficiently as possible. And gift cards, while it's kind of the stepping stone, instead of, if somebody's going to spend anyways, instead of going from a crypto wallet or an exchange to your bank account to credit card to Amazon, we enable you to go directly from wallet to gift card to Amazon, for example. And then we're working on some of this stuff in Bermuda where we can actually go directly from wallet to merchant.
Wow. 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 And it's like also like some sort of like a cash back, or incentive as well. So, because I'm seeing you can start saving, essentially by using the app. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that aspect of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially what we've done is because we've been able to negotiate discounts with brands, we kind of act like an affiliate. We're able to do a rev share model with the customers. So we basically give you make a purchase. And so I think that, that is a pretty important way of incentivizing people to use the platform, keep them within the platform, and frankly, help people save money, like try and realize this vision of making things more cost effective.
Wow, wow, wow. So, there was something that also that you talked about, was branded currencies. You had mentioned that in the past. Can you share a little bit of, I guess, what that concept, what you meant by that? We're kind of talking about, working with these brands and these companies. What was your intention on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we basically think that branded currency, and this has been a term that's used in the gift card space for quite a while, actually, but that digital gift cards are essentially branded currency. I mean, what's an Amazon gift card worth? I mean, $20 at Amazon is basically worth $20 in cash. I mean, the amount that you can buy at Amazon or Walmart, for example, the amount of things you can purchase, it's just as good as cash, essentially. But like I kind of hinted at before, one of the challenges in the gift card space is there's a lot of fraud, right? Because these systems are pretty old, they're archaic. The way the system works is a lot of people resell gift cards to each other, and they're through all these siloed databases. And so the brands themselves, like it's very similar to a central bank, actually. Once the brand kind of issues credit, just like a central bank, it goes to the commercial banks. They lose visibility into where that credit actually goes until it kind of reaches them again, right? So there's a huge data gap in terms of where stuff moves, and that's where the fraud opportunities arrive, right? So either selling on a secondary market, somebody sells a gift card for like, I'm getting rid of this Amazon gift card for $90 for a $100 gift card, and then it turns out they ended up already spending it. There's all those challenges. I think Ray at Paxful has actually talked a lot about this too, where a bunch of the fraud challenges they've had with gift cards. And at the end of the day, when we saw this technology emerging, we're like, what's the difference between a stablecoin even and branded currency and like a digital gift card? Not much. I mean, there's a few mechanics to it, but arguably it's actually better because not only can we actually have verifiable transactions and traceability, we can remove fraud, because the whole table stakes for any blockchain network now or distributed ledger is removing that whole double spend problem that Bitcoin solved, right? And so there's huge cost savings to brands. And on top of that, there's really interesting things you can start to do once this is in a more programmatic, and secure format, in that you can actually you could start to go into real-time payroll. You could start to go into more efficient cross-border trade finance. Where we see this going in the long term, whether we do it or not, is that you're going to have brands issuing their own cryptocurrency for sure. And you're going to have, this may end up showing up on a DEX, on a decentralized exchange, where you can literally just swap, Amazon coin for Walmart coin, essentially, and whenever you need it. And people, we could see a world where people get paid, employees at Walmart get paid in Walmart coin, and then can go and spend that at a bunch of other retailers because of the verifiability. So I think we're still a ways out from that, but and in some ways that may be a little bit of a scary concept, actually, because maybe you don't want a brand to have that much control. But I think there are massive gains to both employees, customers, and brands themselves, where just making this model a bit more direct to consumer and direct, peer to peer really is going to have massive efficiency gains. Even from an employee perspective, like I've got a buddy who helps run a company that that kind of smooths out payday lending, essentially. I mean, so instead of somebody spending like 400% whatever on payday lending to get a cash advance, these guys will help them out at like 10%. And I'm going, you could make that zero.
Right.
And imagine what that would do to somebody's life, right? Huge. It's huge.
That's huge.
So I think this is where we see that stuff going.
Well, I was going to say, let's talk about some of these, major moves that Bidali's been in the media for recently. Last year, February, through a partnership with Canada Stablecorp, it was announced that there was a new Canadian dollar-backed stablecoin being launched, the QCAD, and payment and settlement integration was going to be available through Bidali as well as Gilded Finance. So can you talk a little bit about that partnership? How did that come across?
Yeah, so we know the people from Stablecorp reasonably well. I mean, I think basically, when was this? This was 2019, early 2020. So I mean, we see stablecoins coming up. US dollar is the predominant one, some in euro, and my pitch to a bunch of people in the Canadian ecosystem was, look, we should have a Canadian dollar one. I think for a lot of people or a lot of countries, I mean, I think this is where we see things going. Eventually, a bunch of countries are going to be issuing their own CDBCs. Bank of Canada has been working on research around this for about a decade. They're still sitting there hesitantly kind of waiting on the side to see what happens. Whereas you have other countries like China and South Korea that are rolling them out.
Right.
China most notably, I think, rolling it out for real, not just in a prototype phase, but like it's happening. This isn't fictitious anymore. So I think we saw that as potentially an alternative for industry to kind of innovate and help push that stuff forward. I think the challenge with so they originally launched on Ethereum. I think they, as far as I know, they may be looking at other ledgers. We were definitely pushing them towards Stellar and saying, get why you would launch on Ethereum first. ERC20s are kind of the standard, easier to integrate for people. But then you really want to get on fast, low cost transaction rails like Stellar, because I think for us, for the payments use case, that's where it really makes sense. I mean, Ethereum gas fees just are pretty prohibitive right now. And yeah, and so to put it in context for people, I'm sure the audience is familiar, but we see transactions anywhere from, let's say, $5 worth of ETH on the low end. We've seen stuff as high as like $50, where people have paid network fees of $50 to do a transaction, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And honestly, I don't even know why people use their service because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, we know who's using it and why they're using it. It's because they kind of have to, and we're one of the few options out there. And there's nothing we can do about these fees, but this is why we put a real emphasis on fast, low-cost networks. So it's why we added USDC on Stellar from day one. We quietly didn't announce it yet, so I guess you kind of get a bit of an exclusive.
Hey, announcement. Hold on. There we go.
There you go. So I mean, we've got. Yeah. We saw transactions, within the first day it went live. So I think the biggest challenge, to QCAD and to some of these other stablecoins has always been, how do people get easy access to that? And our approach is, there's two ways to do it. One is people purchase these assets directly. Usually people are coming in through a speculative nature, which means they're not really in the mindset to spend it either. Right. So the better approach is actually if people are earning this. like
Right.
earning crypto. And that's where a lot of our users come from. But what if you're earning in like USDC on Stellar, for example?
Absolutely.
You're basically getting paid US dollars and now have programmatic money that can move at the speed of the internet for less than a penny. And I think that's really important. And that's what we're trying to support. And even with the mechanism within our mobile app, you know, at the end of the day, these are actually Stellar assets under the hood right now that people get redistributed back as cashback. So
Wow.
we're kind of straddling this line between like a point system and a cashback mechanism from a regulatory standpoint, but trying to open up that door so that people are actually earning value on more efficient payment rails that then they can start to move around and use. And they're doing it without even knowing it. So we don't openly tout that you're earning crypto, but that's kind of what's happening.
Well, and I think that just the amazing thing about Stellar is that it allows for this. You know, if I go to your app, it's smooth. I've downloaded it myself, and it's just amazing how you're able to go through everything, and like you said, without having to know, you're using blockchain. On that topic, you know, one thing I was curious, and you're using the app, is that it's built on Stellar. But I'm noticing I'm not having to like remember like seek private keys and whatnot. How do you guys handle that barrier?
Yeah. So right now, our approach, so bringing it back kind of longer term, is like we think that right now we're in the stage in the market where you need to straddle the line between being decentralized and centralized, because you just can't provide the user experience without being somewhat centralized right now, and the cost efficiencies. Unfortunately, you know, we've seen a lot of groups jump to day one decentralization, and this is where they run into barriers, is that it's just not cost effective, right? And so this is why I think the speculative side of things has been the dominant player in the space so far. Now, with that in mind, our approach has been, okay, how do we make it so people don't need to know about blockchain and crypto and still realize these benefits? So what we do is the wallet is actually custodial, but it's a bit of a hybrid, because at the end of the day, you're still buying gift cards, which are centralized. So it kind of doesn't matter if you have your private key, but we laid out the infrastructure such that we kind of get to tap the best of both worlds right now, where it's hybrid. And so what that means in plain language is that you have your own private key on the mobile device. What we do is we do what we call onion encryption. So we encrypt it on the device with multiple factors and then re-encrypt it on our side in kind of a multi-signature type structure so that it acts as a backup. So you can recover your key in case you lose your phone or whatever. As long as you remember a PIN code and have access to your email, you can recover your key. While at the same time, nobody inside our organization, or even if we got hacked, it's very low likelihood that somebody would be able to do anything with your private key. And there just isn't really much of an incentive either, because the amount of funds that people would have at this stage is quite low. So we have it's essentially like a private key backup mechanism is what we enable right now. Now we will enable the ability for people to choose. Coming back to that option, or what I discussed before around the importance of crypto and being able to choose how much custody you want. We want to give people the ability to back up their own private key themselves, and then we wouldn't even store it, or give them the option, like, do you want us to store it for you and you store it? The reason why we didn't go to that from day one was making it easier for people to use the technology without needing to know about the mechanics of blockchain tech. But then B, there's actually some security risk there. You could argue that somebody's maybe more likely to lose their private key or have it stolen than our system being compromised, which is like heavily gated and monitored and has double encryption, and very few people have access to the ability to even get access to the database inside our org and all of these things, right? So the attack vectors are actually a lot smaller, as opposed to just accidentally writing it down and then leaving it somewhere. So that's kind of the approach that we took so far, and kind of how it fits in.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I know that, especially with all these new people coming into crypto, I've seen on Twitter a couple of times where people have tweeted that they've lost funds, they've lost cryptos because they're brand new, and they miswrote down
Yeah,
their
it
secret
happens
key or
a
something
lot.
simple like that. But kind of going on with some more announcements. Earlier this year, it was announced an initiative with Goslings in support with the Bermuda government, and Goslings is working with you guys as far as a rum company looking to accept touchless payments through Stellar, which is pretty exciting. For people not familiar, I mean, you guys might have heard of Bacardi, but Goslings is actually founded older than them. They were founded, I believe, in 1806, and it's pretty neat. I was looking up that their rum distillate, it comes from the Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad. Shout out to everybody in Trinidad. So what can you share about this partnership? I think that it's really exciting what's going on in Bermuda.
Yeah, so the Bermuda government has been extremely progressive. So Premier Burt, he's an engineer by background, and I think similar to Francis Suarez in Miami, who's been getting a lot of attention lately in the crypto space in particular, is like he really understands where the future of this is going, and he's openly said, they in Bermuda, they recognize they're a small country, but that they would like to create an environment where companies can come and experiment, and they want to see companies attempt to help digitize their payments infrastructure, because in Bermuda they don't have things like Venmo. They also, because they're a small market in terms of payment processing technology, they kind of get bucketed into Latin American kind of cohort in terms of fees and even payments infrastructure. It's pretty broken there and pretty inefficient. And so, he basically recognized pretty early on that this could actually take things to the next level. We could basically leapfrog some of the stuff that's been happening in other countries and jump right to more open payment rails, because he thinks and he agrees with me and I think a bunch of other people in the space that open networks ultimately end up winning. And if we can create a environment where it makes sense from a regulatory perspective, but can benefit from private innovation that is likely to move much faster than government and probably produce a better result, then they want to create that environment. So we've been working with the Premier's Office of Fintech. So Dennis Pitcher is one of the guys who's been kind of leading the charge over there, as well as Marcus. And we've been basically working with them to think through a deployment of digital currency payments infrastructure on open payment network. And right now, the first phase of that was working with Gosling's kind of to enable people to do digital currency payments in that respect, very similar to the way a Bermuda dollar would look like. I'll caveat and say, this isn't an official Bermuda dollar yet, but that is the path, is to hopefully get towards that and work towards that. We've been working very heavily with the Bermuda Monetary Authority, who kind of oversees the regulatory side of this, and making sure that we manage the risks. Because even as I mentioned in the beginning of this, in the video that you played at the beginning, there's a lot of responsibility involved in building out this infrastructure. I mean, it's fun to ship stuff and like experiment, but when people start to become dependent on that infrastructure, and especially when you start to move towards a central bank digital currency, there are levels of risk that need to be addressed. And so that's stuff that we've been working through over the last year and continue to work towards with the government in Bermuda and the Bermuda Monetary Authority, in the hopes that we can actually roll out a official Bermuda dollar nationwide within the next year on more open payment rails.
Nice. This is pretty cool. I mean, here you go. My first digital payment in Bermuda, and I thought it was really cool. You say, "How was it?" And he said, "Super fast and easy." So, I mean, that's really exciting. You know what you guys are doing, and it's coming into real world action and use case here. Um, so, let me ask you this: what's next for Bidali as we kind of wrap things up? What's the outlook for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're focused on the initiatives in Bermuda. So kind of the next phase there is an expanded pilot, working towards an expanded pilot beyond what we did with Gosling's. So we intentionally, again, kind of coming back to managing risk and baby steps and making incremental steps that are meaningful. The first step was, okay, we have we think that digital currency payments infrastructure is the future, right? Everybody's in belief. Premier to a bunch of people on the island, people at the Bermuda Monetary Authority, right? There's lots of potential here. Okay, how do we actually roll that out? Well, in a risk, in a way that it makes sure that it's not a big risk too, in the case that it fails, because like tech can fail for all sorts of reasons, right?
Right.
And we want to make sure that it actually solves problems for people. So the first step was enabling people at one business, and Gosling's in this case. So it's amazing to see Gosling's oldest business, or Bermuda's oldest business, adopt super cutting edge tech.
1806, man, 1806. That was shocking. How old that organization is, and like you said, to jump on to something so brand new as this.
Yeah, so huge shout out to the Gosling's family and team there for making this happen. They helped pull it together on pretty short notice, actually, because with COVID happening, we did it all remote. We weren't sure how it was going to go. Like, it was a little bit crazy, but it went pretty well, and the feedback was really positive. As always, there's room for improvement. But
look at that. He's got his bag. He got a couple bags of Goslings right there. Look at that. I'm gonna go buy some.
Yeah, so there you go. So the idea was, and they are available in the States and Canada and UK. In the UK, yeah, you can order online.
Nice.
It's good stuff. You got to do the old dark and stormy. It's ginger beer and Gosling's rum. It's the best.
And on a separate note, isn't Gosling's has some ginger, like in the ingredients? I believe. Yes.
Yeah. They make their own ginger beer too. It's excellent.
Ooh. Nice.
It's probably one of the best around that I've had. Yeah, it's great. Definitely perfect for a nice patio day.
Nice. All right.
So yeah, next thing is basically expanding that out. So we enabled them to kind of accept it, kind of like a gift card hybrid between a gift card and I would say like a full blown like central bank digital currency. Trying to limit the scope so that there isn't a huge amount of risk, but still have people get the same feedback and have the same experience as if they were paying with the Bermuda dollar. And, that went really well. So the next step is working with a few more brands on the island, a few more people, oversight from the BMA. What we're hoping to do is enabling people to load up their wallet balance with their bank account in Bermuda. That'll be kind of the next step. Really moving towards that Venmo and like tightening the integration between traditional financial infrastructure and this new stuff. And if that goes well, then, there's real appetite, I think, to start to create full circle payments where we can do, businesses could, do payroll or could start to remit payments for taxes back to the government or licensing fees. And I think that's kind of the game plan that we're hoping to roll out over the next bit in those phases. And, I think we'll get a lot of learnings from it, and it'll be really important for not only us as a business in Bermuda too, but really important, I think, for the crypto space, because Bermuda is unique in that it doesn't have a central bank. So they don't have the ability to just issue their own currency. And this is there's a bunch of reasons why we looked at Bermuda. Everything from them having probably the best, if not tied with Switzerland in terms of the compliance regime and regulatory work that they've done at the BMA to create an environment where you can be regulated in Bermuda and do these things without it being incredibly onerous, but also making sure that the risks are managed and it's not just like the Wild West, which is really important for gaining trust in mainstream usage, right?
Right.
So I think that stuff there, but then in combination with the fact that they're US dollar based, their currency, they don't have a central bank, they're looking to leverage private industry to help move some of the stuff forward and kind of chart a path towards better digital financial infrastructure. We looked at that as an incredible opportunity to showcase, what can be done. And so right now, that stuff is happening on Stellar. In particular, I think it's important that it's demonstrated on a public network versus a permissioned one, because
Nice.
I think for all intents and purposes, this stuff can be managed well on public infrastructure. And that's sort of the whole point of crypto and this decentralized movement, is that it adds better reliability because the incentives are aligned in such a way that all the network participants work together to ensure that the network stays viable and stays usable. And that's probably better than having one company control all of the infrastructure. So those are kind of the next steps. That's the big push over the next bit. Of course, always interested in talking with brands. We'd love to get feedback on the mobile app. We're continuing to add support for additional payment methods in. So ACH in the US will be a big one.
Nice.
As well as more places to spend, we're continually adding brands to the gift card catalog and now starting to work with a few brands directly on branded currency initiatives. So if there's anybody listening that's running a brand or knows of one that we should talk to that is interested in kind of the future of gift cards and branded currency, I'd love to chat with them.
You guys are definitely on track. I mean, the app is sweet. You've got the experience working in Canada on the stablecoin. You've got this great initiative going on in Bermuda, and you're just a pleasure to talk to, man. I've said it a couple times. I just love the way that you're somebody in the space that brings the humanitarian, psychology, economics, worldview all into the space, man, and it's so needed. So really want to thank you for coming to the show. Round of applause, man. It's been really, really great. Want to give a shout out to everybody that's been there. Absolutely.
Yeah, the
absolutely.
pleasure's mine. I appreciate you for doing all the work that you've been doing in the Stellar community. I think that's been badly needed as well. Having somebody help highlight some of the stuff that's happening, because the space is moving so fast. It's so hard to keep on top of everything, and the quality of interviews that you've been putting on and the work that you've been doing to champion things. I'm hoping that the next time Meridian happens, it'll be in person and we'll get to hang out in person.
Absolutely, man. Gosling's on me, man.
Yeah. Sounds good,
you hang on real quick, everybody. Stay tuned. I'm planning actually in Stellar Global. We're gonna have a how to be an anchor seminar. It's gonna be a nice interview inside Stellar Global. So make sure to be on the lookout for that. And talking about Stellar Global, shout out to Dorian, man. This has happened. We actually have a guy, Dorian, part of our admin team that lives in Bermuda. And so I definitely have to make sure he gets connected out there with you guys. Absolutely. Hey, everybody at home, everybody around the globe, thanks for tuning in. Eric, hang on tight.